É, acho que é. Tá.
Okay. All right. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. So I know that people are in different parts of the world, and that's the magic of connection nowadays. I'm very happy to host today Professor Dagmar Monett in the series of talks in Conexão Rio Campinas, Connection Rio Campinas, a partnership between the Institute of Computing here in Campinas, São Paulo, Brazil, known as the Brazilian Silicon Valley, and the marvelous city of Rio de Janeiro with the Pontifical Catholic University in Rio. So this talk is also part of our artificial intelligence lab called Recode AI. So you can see that I'm today wearing the official clothes of the lab. So Professor Dagmar Monett kindly accepted to talk to us this morning, right after having a flight from Stockholm to Germany. And it's very kind of her to have accepted this invitation. So the title of the talk is Coming to Terms with Intelligence in Machines, or Why There Is Almost None of This Intelligence. And Professor Dagmar Monett is a professor of computer science at the Berlin School of Economics and Law. And she is going to talk to us for about 40, 50 minutes, and then we can have some minutes of discussion. So Professor Dagmar, thank you very much for accepting this invitation. The floor is all yours. I will be here in the background with my mic and camera closed. So if you need anything, just let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anderson, for the invitation. So actually, it was everything okay with the trip back to Berlin and also with preparing the slides. I was thinking about the audience when you wrote in the email who will be attending, well, from other parts of the world. And I have to apologize, I have nobody else here at home that can take care. Well, you hear this in the background, and I hope it is not such a problem. So the topic, as you see, is also some kind of, putting under question the topic of intelligence in machines, whether there is intelligence or not, whether it is actually then only calculating very fast. What does intelligence means when we talk about intelligence in humans and in machines? And I think it could be interesting for computer science students or neuroscience students and the like that deal with this topic.
It's muted now, Professor Dagmar.
Sorry. So if I show you this picture, and I ask you how intelligent are these artifacts, R2 or Wally, well, you would say they are very, very intelligent. Of course, in the context of the movies, they are the main characters, but you would say they are very intelligent. The capabilities they show, how they interact and what they do, etc. We could say these are actually intelligent capabilities in machines, no? In this case. When I show you, however, these other robots, and ask you, well, what do you think compared to the other robots? Then you will start to think, well, they cannot move. They only do the same repetitive tasks. They have no new ideas, maybe about creativity, about interacting with others. It is the same things they do all the time. And then you maybe would classify them as less intelligent than the others. They are also machines. So I am advancing something about what intelligence means. And in this case, it is very contextual, like in the other case. But here, for example, they don't move, they are not social, don't interact with others, and so on. So maybe less intelligence. If I show you this, actually where all the programs, all the data, social networks, etc., where they are located, where they are saved, so the cloud, actually, there are no cloud computers, but something like that. And I ask you the same question, so how intelligent are these machines or these servers that are there? Yeah, that's not the same as for the others, no? And actually, when I show you this one too, you say, okay, these are the robots, the ones that we know, not only from Hollywood, but the ones we can touch. And actually, if you communicate with them, for example, with Pepper, and talk about some topic that Pepper was not trained with, then Pepper cannot communicate with you. Yeah. And actually, then the question of how intelligent is Pepper, then you will maybe doubt. Yeah, compared to Wall-E, for example. No? And that's the case that still the people that can communicate well, also if we see the pictures or images on a computer, are the humans. And that's something we would like machines also to do, etc. But we are not so far in the field. And why is happening this now? So why there is so much interest in AI in the last years? I would say in the last 12 years, it has been a boom in AI, a momentum, which is a very, very good thing for the field. And why? Because, well, big data was like a revolution with the social networks. So data available every second worldwide in millions, posts, likes, conversations, also pictures, videos, etc. And all this information, data available was or is very, very good for some kinds of artificial intelligence algorithms, not for all the algorithms we know. So there are a lot of different subfields in the area of artificial intelligence, but for the ones dealing with data, like the ones in machine learning, which is a subfield of AI, but not only the only field of AI, it is very good for them. And when you have a lot of data, and also you have very powerful computers, which is on the bottom, then of course you can run these algorithms and have results fast enough in order to adapt them, to improve them, to optimize them, the models and so on. And then you have new results which come very, very fast compared to 10, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, because of the parallel computers and so on. And then you have new insights into the algorithms that you can improve them again, and it is like a cycle. If you add to that open source and open access, for example, I remember 20 years ago, if you wanted the paper of the conference, you had to wait until the proceedings were published. And then you maybe write the authors, or maybe there is something in the internet. It's not always the case, but now it is not the case. Now, even papers before the conferences take place, they are uploaded to the internet with the models, with all the things, also with code that you can use, you can improve, you can try to adapt. And then, of course, almost everybody can do something with AI, which is a very good thing in some cases, but not in other cases. And also the platforms, all the tools and for development that are available. So cloud computing has been a very good thing for such algorithms. So when you see actually, think about intelligence is actually also all these things we have at 10, and we work with them and how we are up to date, and we cannot read everything that is published, but we have access to an amount of information, knowledge, research, scientific results that we can deal with, we can use, and very, very fast, or at least compared but in such a lot of cases, very, very fast, you can have results and do something with them. So this momentum of AI has been, of course, very good for the field, for funding, for having resources and so on, for the media sometimes, but it has some disadvantages. I will come to that later in the talk. Actually, technology provides a room, opportunities to create new jobs too. It is also said that, well, computers and robots will take all the jobs. And the jobs, like the picture I showed you at the beginning, in some robots in the industry, or industry robots that they are called. Of course, they substituted some jobs, repetitive tasks, etc., but also dangerous tasks that we humans actually wouldn't like to do. So there is, of course, a very, a lot of hope in such technologies and such algorithms, etc., that can enhance, that can generate new jobs in new sectors, new jobs we don't know they could exist some years ago, and there will be new jobs coming also in the future. All technologies, all new technologies, not only computer science-based technologies. But you also have this, and this is a very, very news from this weeks, actually from this year, where thousands of software engineers, machine learning engineers, and so on have also lost their jobs. So you see there are phases in the economy, sometimes there are crises where all the jobs are lost. But I could say that, for example, not all these layoffs have to do with AI doing something, or because of AI we have less jobs now. So it is a mix. It is not so easy, and it is actually very complicated to go to the reasons, because there are other parameters, other reasons, other problems, situations that also contribute to that. So with that, I am not happy, of course, but it is not only depending on AI. So when you see in the news AI will take all the jobs, well, you have to pound other different aspects, factors that may contribute to the whole. Okay. So, because there is still a growing demand for workers in academia, robotics, in the robotics industry, in related fields. For example, I did some research with one of my students. She and I were analyzing only the job posts in the Robotics Worldwide archives since 2005. They post every week, almost every day, new job post in, and there is, so they are lacking the workforce to develop such robots, for example, in biocybernetics, in automation in general, micro robotics, and so on. So experts are needed. So if you choose in the future something that has to do with artificial intelligence, with robotics, with computer science, with engineering, it won't be so difficult to find jobs. Even with these layoffs we have now, there is a lot of different possibilities for other different startups, communities, and so on, to build products, to do something that hopefully will support or will solve problems locally, sometimes nationally, sometimes in a region. So there is still need for people doing PhDs, studying these fields, because this will be the future, still will be the future. Okay. Let's come now to defining intelligence. So what does it mean when we talk about intelligence in machines and also in humans, if they are the same? The first thing I want you to remember later, or to learn about, is that it is a very difficult concept to define intelligence in humans, and also in machines, and also in animals, in plants, in other entities. Now, it is not so easy to define. In my research, I came up with this definition of intelligence that maybe it is the first scientific definition of intelligence. So we have also more than 2,000 years also how people, for example, in China or in Asia, what they see in people, which capabilities that make them look intelligent, but they didn't define that time so scientifically what intelligent means. And I found this so in one book from Taine, I hope it's pronounced Taine, from 1870s, where he defined intelligence as follows. So it is an intelligent being, animal or man. So look, it is not only humans, it is also animals. When he supplies its wants, preserves its life, improves its condition only by the exact accordance of its present prevision and the near or even distant future. Yeah, trying to preserve, supply, improve something, so similar to adapting. And it is actually one of the basics of intelligence in machines, also in humans. So adapting to new situations, you know what to do, but you also get what you need in order to adapt and to live, to preserve your condition, and so on. Yeah? Very intelligent. This one is a very well accepted, widely accepted in neurosciences and related fields, definition of intelligence, in this case in humans, mainly psychology, but also neurosciences and related fields. And it is, this is Linda Gottfredson, a psychologist. She defines intelligence as a very mental, very general mental capability that among other things involves the ability to reason about a problem, for example, how to solve a problem and so on, or solve problems also, solving them, thinking abstractly, comprehending complex ideas, learning quickly, and also learning from experience. What you have done, you don't have to learn that again. Hopefully you remember that and can apply that to new situations, but not actually rote learning, where you learn something and then you cannot reason about that, but also in a new situation, making sense of something new, for example, figuring out what to do, catching on in a situation, in an environment where you need to do so, for example, for adapting, for solving problems and so on. And this is what is called intelligence. Parenthesis, I did a survey with a colleague, and we put some definitions of intelligence in humans, in machines, without the author, and let the community, let the participants decide or give their opinions on what do they think about, for example, the definitions, were they good or not, what they find, why it is a good definition, and so on. And this one was the most accepted definition. 70% or more were computer scientists. They didn't know they were agreeing with a definition of intelligence also in machines coming from a psychologist, parenthesis closed. Other definitions of intelligence, among more than 500 definitions of intelligence I have found in my research in recent years, are these three, only 3 of 10, but these are very, very well known in the community. And the one from Winston, for example, artificial intelligence is the study of the computations that make it possible to perceive, reason, and act, is a definition that defines also the field. So artificial intelligence as the field, as a field. And perceiving, reasoning, and acting in accordance to what was perceived and what was reasoned about that is actually 3 capabilities that a lot of people will say these are one of the most important ones for machines to be intelligent. You also have on the right side the definition of Pei Wang, defined intelligence, so this 95 in his PhD thesis, but also in his research later. It is a constant definition in his research. So he defines intelligence as the principle of adapting to the environment, and adapting in a way when you don't have all the resources available or knowledge available. So when you have to deal with that and then you can adapt, then we can call that intelligence. In this case, he was defining intelligence in machines. And a very well-known definition too was from Chainleg, one of the founders of DeepMind, and Markus Hutter, who was his supervisor. And they defined, or they published a very, very well-known paper, 2007, together with this. So it was almost months far, one from the other, with more than 70 definitions of intelligence. 71 is from them, and it is this one: intelligence measures an agent ability to achieve goals in a wide range of environments. So a wide range of environments mean different situations where, of course, the agent have to adapt. It is not the same playing Go as playing chess as solving a different mathematical problem. So if the agent is capable of adapting to the environment, they don't say this explicitly, but is able to reach goals in order to solve the problems of such situations that are very, very different in nature, conditions, and so on, then it could be an intelligent entity. I did some research also with some students of mine. I will show you the definition again, if I can go here. Yeah. So artificial intelligence, the one from Winston. So make it possible, computations that make it possible to perceive, reason, and act. And I took a look about how often comes the word perceive, reason, and act in research papers from the community. So I analyzed it all, text from the ISCAI, the International Joint Conference on Artificial Intelligence. So the papers since the 90s, all the papers, we analyzed the abstracts. Sometimes were only the titles available, not sometimes also the abstracts, and sometimes the whole papers. And we analyzed, we took a look at how often comes, for example, reason, how often comes perceive, and how often comes act. Yeah. And notice that the scales are different, but for example, perceiving the environment, the new situations, maybe through sensors and so on, is in decline. So you see on the left-hand side, 5 times. This is what it means. So only 5 times or less, and it is in decline. So it is until, well, we took a look until 2020. Yeah, it was in decline. It was not so important maybe for developing new algorithms, intelligent algorithms, to perceive the environment. Yeah. In the case of reasoning, well, a little bit more. So more or less 50, and almost all the years, a little bit more, a little bit less. So it is one of the capabilities that is very, very important for having intelligent machines, I would suppose. And on the right-hand side, acting less, so more or less the half of that. It is more related to robotics, so acting also in an environment, not like, for example, other algorithms where acting is not so evident, and it is also in decline. So maybe robots are not resulting in what we thought they could be in 2020 when we thought about that 20 years earlier. So to have an idea how these capabilities come up also in research. It is not a new thing. So I show you a definition from the 1870s, 18th century, no, 19th century. It was a constant in psychology as a field. So they were always very, very interested in defining intelligence in humans. And there was a symposium in 1921, more than 100 years ago, where educational psychologists came together and tried to define intelligence. They were only 14 participants, mainly from US and Europe. And in the definitions, when you analyze the definitions, what comes up is the prediction of behavior. So whether you can predict a behavior, and how about this behavior, and depending on that, whether the children or the humans in general are intelligent or not. These are only 5 examples of those 14 definitions. So 5 examples, so that you have an idea how they define intelligence 100 years ago, the psychologists. And you will find a lot of similarities with what we think of intelligence in machines today. Now, for example, the power of good responses, yeah, or the ability to carry on abstract thinking. This is a constant, has been a constant all the time. Learning to adjust, so to adapt, in other words, or capacity of knowledge or folk knowledge, or capacity to acquire capacity independently, maybe without the help of others. Yeah. Some years later, so 65 years later, there was another symposium from psychologists, mainly now more diverse in general. So not only educational psychologists, but also cognitive scientists, social psychologists, cross-cultural psychologists, etc. Again, mainly from US and Europe. And you see what we are not taking into account from other regions of the world, which also have deal with these concepts. And that time they were a little bit more 25. And when you take a look at the definitions, they are mainly about understanding what is done. And understanding what is done is very complex. And see, so these are 16 of the 25 definitions. I want you to focus only on the red words. No? It is an elusive concept, actually very difficult to define. Illusory, polymorphous, a lot of different things contributing to that. Context dependent. It will be not intelligence, maybe in a different context. It depends on the context, the capabilities, in other words, a mixture of something, of different things, a judgment too. So intelligence also depends on, or is on the eyes of the beholder. So it is not something that is in the person, but it is how it is perceived that this person behaves. So a societal construct, ethnocentric, centric, culture bound, maybe in a different culture is defined differently, and you see that there is no consensus either. Yeah. What I thought together with a colleague? Well, let's ask other people about the definitions of intelligence. So how do they find definitions from the literature? So we put some definitions from human intelligence, as I told you, of intelligence in machines, and let them then have opinions about that. And we thought this, in mind we had, well, let's get a consensus. Let's talk about that, and let's think about which are the main capabilities in computers, and let's maybe find a good definition for expressing that. We wanted to reach some consensus, at least general consensus. It was not possible. So one of the questions was, and how would you define intelligence? And at the end, we had more than 340 new definitions of intelligence, which was crazy. And more than 1,000 opinions these definitions, but also on the other definitions that were from the literature. So at the end, more than 4,000 opinions, why this one is good, why the other is not so good, and so on. And we had not only psychologists, we also had computer scientists, neuroscientists, engineers, mathematicians, cognitive scientists, philosophers, and so on. More than 560, coming mainly from academia, but also from industry. And what we observed was that mainly it was focused on computing something and how fast you can compute something or machines, then it was taken as intelligent enough. Yeah, for example. If you see, or what we observed is that, well, there was no consensus 1921. Great disagreement. There was no consensus 1986, and there is still no consensus in these years we are living now. Actually, we wanted to go further. Okay, Pei Wang, the definition I showed you. So Pei Wang wrote an article. It was published in the Journal of Artificial General Intelligence, and we led, I was the editor together with two other colleagues, and we let 10 scientists in the community comment that article. We had 20 new articles commenting from leading experts in AI, commenting Pei Wang's article, and there was still no consensus. And then a replay from Wang, so answering the questions and so on, and there were still no consensus. And at that time I was like, okay, we maybe will never have consensus on what intelligence is, because it is a very difficult concept to define, but we maybe don't want to have consensus, but to know about the boundaries of the discourse. And then I shift my focus. So I am more interested now in discussing which are the different capabilities that contribute to intelligence in machines, and then seeing what are the boundaries. Contextually, maybe we have to change, and maybe we will never have one definition of intelligence where everybody can agree upon. Why? Because, well, there is no consensus, as you see, but it is a very polarized concept. Yeah, not only in machines, but also in humans. There is a lot of multidisciplinarity. It is not only AI scientists trying to define intelligence, but it is also neuroscientists, psychologists, and so on, with a tradition that is more than 100 years old. And because also we have misleading news about AI, a lot of hype which is damaging the field. So it has negative connotations too. So actually, also the boundaries is a very, very difficult thing to agree upon. Yeah, and it is actually a good thing if we are aware of that. Yeah, we don't need to have an answer. Being aware of the situation is already a good step in the right direction. And this is what I want you to take now from this discussion. For example, because we have cognitive biases, and we observed, for example, in the survey we did, that one of the most well-known definitions of intelligence in one of the most used books in universities worldwide, the one from Russell and Norvig, so it is called The Bible of AI, Artificial Intelligence, a Modern Approach. They define intelligence there like this. So intelligence is concerned mainly with rational action, and ideally an intelligent agent takes the best possible action in a situation. And we were seeing, because of the comments of the participants in our survey, that people were discussing, no, this is not a good definition, rational action. Why? Sometimes we humans are irrational, and we solve the problems, and we are intelligent. And it is not always the best possible action. Sometimes we also have other actions that are not the best ones, and we are still intelligent entities. And well, that's a very well-known cognitive bias there, which is named focalism. You focus on something and don't see the rest. And the rest is, in this case, that it is concerned mainly with rational action. So mainly, but not always, yeah? And ideally, the best possible action, but ideally means in ideal conditions, but if you have them, not always. So if you only focus on the best and the discussion, and maybe we cannot agree on the best because this and that, and you don't see that ideally has a lot of weight also on that definition, we of course will never reach consensus. Yeah, so this is only one example of the different cognitive biases we only found on the comments. Yeah. So it is also very important to be aware of how we humans interact, discuss about a topic, and maybe never reach agreement because the cognitive biases we have and we still be having in the future, our human condition. So this is also a key learning I want you to keep later. There is no consensus on defining intelligence, and this is okay. So when you hear about intelligence, you maybe want to ask, defined by whom, which is the situation, which is the product, or which is the entity, in which context. And then you maybe are or agree with one definition or the other better. You know that it is very difficult to agree upon a definition, and maybe it is only very, very contextual. Okay. Let's put this in the broad picture of AI as a field. The promise of AI as a field since the beginnings, so 1956, when the field was funded. Yeah. Well, the promises, and I have now, for now on, some books that maybe you are interested to read. This is for the general public, also for computer science students or related areas. It would be a very, very good thing to read. So not only with formulas, but also in a language you can understand very, very easy, maybe. Sorry. And Michael Woodrich, which is an expert in AI, he writes that the long-term dream of all of the field since its foundation is to have full range of capabilities in machines for intelligent actions like the ones you and I have or do, or for example, having consciousness, being self-aware, autonomous in the way we humans are. And to have this in machines is the long-term dream of AI. We are far away from this now. If we focus on, for example, of this promise of artificial intelligence in medicine, is actually to have such programs that give us a view of the doctors, for example, a view of individuals, of patients with panoramic medical data, to improve decision-making, to help them making such decisions, which in some situations are not so easy to make, to avoid human errors, for example, by misclassifications or misdiagnoses and so on, to help ordering interpretation of tests and so on. So there is a lot of hope put into machines that can help, for example, in the medical domain, in healthcare, doctors, patients, and so on. This is the hope, the promise of everything what AI could do if implemented the right way and so on. For example, things like that. So pattern recognition, image analysis, we have a lot of this. Recently also real-time analytics of data from patients that can monitor in real time what is happening. Also still clinical decision support systems like the expert systems we have in the 80s, but more so with other paradigms and algorithms that can also make decisions in real time in different situations, even when the knowledge is not available, and so on. So there is a lot, there is an enormous potential of artificial intelligence. This is a good thing because there will be still needed in the long-term future. So it is not everything done. In education, so AI in education, the promise is to have such artifacts and such programs that can help teachers more or less having knowledge and acting in a similar way. So to have information about the students, how the students learn, which are the best ways to learn, what are the interests of the students, if they are getting bored and so on. And there is a lot of things that can be simulated that can help teachers and parents and students selves improve learning and so on. So there is a lot also in one field, in this field of education. And these are two fields that when decisions are made involve, of course, the future of human lives. No? So it is not classifying tomatoes. This is doing something where the impact is directly on humans. And then we need to be very careful because sometimes, for example, I take this example of AI in education. So the promise of AI that it can do all the things and improve learning and help teachers, etc., is very different to what is happening in reality. And this is where we have to have our eyes wide open. For example, if you remember well, this was a couple of years ago in UK. So because of Corona, it was not possible to have the exams at the university or at school. It wasn't possible. It was lockdown. So what they decided was, okay, we have a lot of data from past years, and we also have how some students behave, and what do teachers expect that they are learning, improving, and having the grades at the end. And they developed algorithms. So the Department of Education contracted one company that developed an algorithm that estimated which would be the grade at the end of the course without letting the students do the exams. Well, what happened that the algorithms gave the students grades that for a lot of different cases were less than the grades that the teachers would have given to the students. And there were a lot of different protests, not only from the students, but also from the parents, and a lot of young people didn't have, with these conditions, access to university anymore. So think about that. How can I give a grade to a student thinking this will be the final note if I don't, or the grade, if I don't give her the chance to do the exam? What do you think if you are in this position? If someone tells you, well, you will be a 5 at the end, sorry, and I don't give you the opportunity to do the exam. This is something that actually shouldn't be happening. And this is another example. So an email accused one student, and this is some anthropomorphism, because the email cannot accuse one student. It is the administration that it is trusting some algorithm that tells that the students committed some cheating and so on. So it was not behaving appropriately. And this student was not the only one. So she learned later that there were other students in the same situation because of some strange behavior when during the exam. Well, this was also with a lot of protests from the students' right groups because it was, of course, not fair, and there was no evidence of that a machine maybe it is analyzing your gaze and your eyes, the movement and so on, but not all the people react the same way. It doesn't mean that if I looked to other way to have some time relaxing my eyes, it doesn't mean necessarily that I am looking at the answer to the problem on the wall and so on. So this was very problematic. And like it is problematic, the whole area of proctoring systems. So these systems that proctor, that observe students while doing exams online, for example. And this is one example from the All AI organization that took a look at different systems of this type and analyzed which are the different properties they comply with. And if you see, almost all of them is 1, so no compliance. Some partial compliance and only a couple of them full compliance. So this was also very criticized by students, infringe privacy of the students, the autonomy of the students. It is a mechanism of surveillance, and this is something we need to deal with. So which is the impact that these programs, which maybe have AI or maybe not, sometimes it is called AI, but it is no AI inside, which is the impact that this could have on students, on society and so on. Yeah. This is also something you can take a look at. So some articles, research articles that have studied this, all these systems and so on, and analyzed from the point of view of ethical aspects and so on. So, and they are compared to Big Brothers, supervision technology, surveillance technologies like in dictatorships and so on, to control the population, not to help them improve, grow, and so on. Yeah. And these are some of the cases. So very, very highly intrusive machinery, lack of AI literacy. So sometimes institutions buy these systems without knowing how they work, with which data and so on. Experts are not involved in the production, in the development of such systems. In this case, experts from the fields where those systems will be applied, but they are only developed, sometimes only developed by computer scientists, which has not the formation, for example, studies and so on, from people coming from sociology, psychology, educational experts, and so on. There is also other problems with the accuracy of the results. For example, no alternative for students to opting out. No, well, if you are not, if you don't agree with that, then you cannot do the exam. Such cases, I mean, zero transparency when results are presented. Well, why? That's not fair, but I want to know why. We don't know. And discrimination too, because we have a huge amount of percentage of the population that is maybe also autistic or with dyslexia, etc., that have different conditions, different ways to react to the same situations others react. And maybe these are not well studied and are not well contemplated in the data, for example, covered in the data. And of course, the algorithms, these systems will make the wrong decisions when these people, for example, are proctors. These are examples we need to take care. And these are also areas of open questions for AI students, for AI researchers, trying to find how we can avoid that, how we can improve these algorithms so that this is not happening. And sometimes the decision is we don't need to have such algorithms. We need other kinds of solutions, and not always AI is not the solution to all the problems. At the end, the question is, it is artificial, it is intelligent. And what I say, this is some work together with a colleague. So we are trying to raise awareness about what AI is. We call this also AI-ware because it is also software at the end. So it is software engineering techniques. For example, you can see this in the MLOps or DevOps, etc. So more focus on such techniques that are well established with standards and so on in the software engineering discipline. At the beginning, it was AI, part of computer science, and also, yeah, very well connected with software engineering, but historically it was then a deviation from each other, and they were two different subfields sometimes, and now they are converging again, which is a good thing. But also being aware of what AI is and is not, should be clear about what are the capabilities, which are the problems these systems can be applied to making sense of in some situations. In others, it doesn't make sense to apply AI, and also the conjunction with software engineering. This is part of the research, but actually, Kate Crawford in her books tells that with different words. For example, it is neither artificial nor intelligence. Rather, artificial intelligence is embodied and material. So at the end, on the other side, there are a lot of humans fueling, classifying, annotating the data so that the algorithms can function, and sometimes also tricking with parameters, and sometimes also moderating the solutions and so on. So it is not only AIs in some way acting alone, independently, autonomously, but there is a lot of humanness behind. Without the AIs cannot function, yeah. And it is also natural resources, fuel, infrastructures, and so on. So it is not so artificial. It is actually very embodied and material in this case, no? Sometimes it happens too that the view in the media is very different to the reality. And I like this quote from Harry Collins a lot, and I would recommend also reading his book, where he defined it is artifictional intelligence, so coming from fiction, from Hollywood. What you see there, the Terminators and so on, this is actually what artificial intelligence is. The other things that we have is actually software programs, and they are not so intelligent as some people may think. So this is also very interesting, a little bit, provocative, but I like that because it is actually also the reality. What you have in the media, in the films, in the books, is not actually what we have in reality happening with these algorithms. Because what you have in the media is something like that. No? And none, so with the images, so with social robots and so on, we don't have that. We have robots like Pepper, and if you put them in some environment, they cannot act, they cannot interact with you, and maybe they cannot walk to, they don't know what to do, which is very, very different with to the things we have in the Hollywood films and so on. I would suggest you also to read the book from Melanie Mitchell. As far as I know, she gave also a talk at your university, a wonderful book, a wonderful AI expert. And she says, she writes in her book, so when you rely on movies and science fiction like that, of course, you will be afraid of those artifacts taking your jobs, taking your lives and so on. But actually, that's not the case in the research and in the products and the things we have right now. So we are far from achieving such intelligence in machines. It is maybe possible in 100 years, maybe in 50, I don't know, I don't have an answer, but it is nothing that actually the experts in computer science care or worry about. And this is, again, the book from Michael Wooldridge, which I would suggest you also to read. So the reality actually is for the foreseeable future, so short-term, middle-term future, sometimes long-term also, is very different to this grand dream to have such machines that are like you and me. We are far away from that. This is a good thing because we have a lot to do, and this is something very, very so great for my students, for you, for all the other people that want to contribute to improving the field, to improving the algorithms, the artifacts, and so on. It is a good sign because it is not the same classifying tomatoes, or for example, what this plant is. A tomato wouldn't be upset if you classify wrong what it is. It happens nothing, actually. And if you have an app that does that automatically, great. And if you don't classify a tomato the right way, there is no problem. But it is a different thing when you deal with language, for example. And it is very, very new. So from yesterday or so, or before yesterday, Galactica, so they use GPT-3 or large language models and try to produce, like research papers according to what they find in a huge amount, vast amount of data. What comes out, you better don't use that in your research papers. Huh? And it is also not the same when you apply this in medicine. You are making decisions that affect people, real people, that maybe are decisions that could mean that these people could die. It is not a tomato anymore. Only one person that dies because of the wrong decision of AI, it is some bad thing that happens. Yeah? We have to be aware of the implications. It is not tomatoes anymore, it is not cats and dogs. Well, of course, not the life of dogs, but I mean classifying, if it is a picture, this and that, then classifying whether a person should go through chemotherapy. This could have a lot of different implications depending on the country you live, for example. Yeah? Because, for example, in this domain, the data is available, but it is very dispersed. One doctor don't have the same data as a different doctor. Sometimes the data is manually taken, sometimes it's only verbally communicated and so on. So you don't have that as, or like the photos that are uploaded to the internet. And all the patients have different conditions, depending also on genetics, depending also on the country you live, the things you eat and so on. They are very, very different. So there are other factors contributing to it. It is more difficult to make decisions that are the right ones. Also for doctors, no? Also for doctors, but it is the same if a machine makes such decisions. We are not prepared to for having that. So we need to talk about that. And law, of course, is not up to date, depending on the technology in this case. For example, the example of cancer. So this could mean a bankrupt But this could mean also, so going through chemotherapy, and maybe it was a false positive. This could have psychological implications, economical implications, and so on for a person, for the family, and so on. And maybe it was not cancer, it was something else that the machine classified the wrong way. So we need to be very careful with such application domains where it could be very, very risky to depend entirely on machines. Okay, and what you see, the reality is that after some time, and I post also on LinkedIn and Twitter too, after some time it comes from this community a lot of different research which tells, in other words, these are not the tools that are ripe now to be used. There is a lot of failure, there is a lot of research done which is not appropriately validated and so on. So these are not good things that are happening. So we have to be very careful, and also how we write about that, how we do research involving such data of patients, of humans, making such decisions and producing such products in some domains where it is not the same as in other domain, or what we have as toy problems in a lab, games and so on. It is very, very different when we go into real applications involving the lives of humans and the well-being of societies and also of nature. Because it is very difficult. So this is an example, or it is a photo of the neural connections of a rodent, only of a rodent, part of the hippocampus. And you see how complex it is. And the complex neural networks, one example of some of the techniques we have in machine learning, which is one example of one of the subfields of all different subfields of AI. There are many more. You see that in complexity, they are not alike. So they model sometimes what happens in the brain. It should not be the same, exactly the same way, and they try to solve problems, but they are far away from how we or how our brains work. And actually, we don't know exactly how they work in their entirety. So this is open questions also all the way down for neuroscientists. It is very, very complex also to model human and to reduce to models the complexity of reality, the complexity of humans. We leave something always out. Yeah? So what are the challenges? And this is the last part of the talk. What are the challenges? Well, we need to know, to be aware that we won't have better than human intelligence in anytime soon. So this is an article of Rodney Brooks, also an expert in AI, especially in robotics too. And this is something we also need to teach. So not only students to know about, but also experts in AI, and not only in AI, to transmit to the general public. Now, what is actually the core, what is AI, why not, and so on. And this is also our book. You have to read that book. This is a great book from Eric Larson, The Myth of Artificial Intelligence, Why Computers Can't Think the Way We Do. Please read that book. And he writes, success on narrow application get us no one step closer to general intelligence, so those machines from the ground dream that act and do and behave like you and me, and no algorithm exists for that. So it is like artificial intelligence, what we see in the field. So there is no algorithm now for this general intelligence. There is the road, the will to construct such machines, and a lot of different research going on in parallel, but we still don't have that. So the grand dream is still far away, and we need maybe a paradigm, new paradigm that maybe have something from the paradigms and algorithms we have now, but maybe not. We are still not so far. Why? So some things that still are lacking, that we still don't have, and there is research in these directions, but we don't have all the answers yet. And this is another book I suggest you to read from Brian Smith, The Promise of Artificial Intelligence. And these, for example, are examples of the standards of genuine intelligence in machines. He actually says, well, what we have now is reckoning. So computing, calculating too fast. And for a lot of people, maybe, well, we had that. So thinking that computers, algorithms were sentient. This is was generated also a lot of discussion in the area. But well, the standards of genuine intelligence, so when we will see or we will have or we will talk about intelligence really like human intelligence, like it must not be exactly, but intelligence in machines, well, all related to temporal things like actuality, possibility, impossibility, such things are very difficult for machines now. So we have models, we have languages also with temporal logic and so on, but all those things are not so ripe enough. Yeah, this maybe should be part of the future paradigm or future intelligent machines. Also commitment and taking care about the difference. So not only, yes, this is my plan and I have to do that, like in, playing football. Well, if I plan for with too much time, before the action will take care, maybe the ball is not in the place anymore. So such things related to commitment and to reasoning about the different, not committing maybe to some actions or to some plans, but to others. So all this planning is a sub-area, sub-field of artificial intelligence. This is also very important. And the capacity to do that, like we humans do, there is still not in machines. Also related to reasoning, learning, plan, acting. So all those things and also embodied, not only algorithms, not only brain-like capabilities, but also related to the body, to other sensoric information and so on. That should be also taken into account. Sociality also. And also distinguishing appearance from reality. So we can maybe distinguish. It is becoming very, very difficult for humans, even for humans, to detect that it's whether it is a fake video or picture or so on. It will be even more difficult in the near future. But for a machine, whether it is reality or fake, this is also very, very difficult. And it is also a road for research actually in the community. And all related to creativity, to consciousness, self-awareness, so the high order capabilities that we have in humans. This is also very, very difficult to implement in machines. And good news, because we have a lot to do in the area. So coming forward, actually, what I have found, it could help AI literacy and starting early. So knowing about AI, what is AI, what not, how do these algorithms work, behave, what are the main components. You don't need to know about everything. And you, of course, and maybe the general public doesn't need to know these very particular things. But in general, what is happening, that it is not magic, it is not a golden bullet and so on. This is important, to know about that. Also, users of such systems, for example, administrations, educational institutions, and so on. They need to know a little bit more about what is happening. And this is also research for transparency in AI and so on. This is the other part. Also tools, frameworks available, how to use them. So if you are a computer science student, this is a must to use, to implement the algorithms, to download what is there, and then adapting maybe to new situations and so on and so on. And the tools and frameworks that allows doing research faster, but also developing those new tools. We need them for research. Also knowing a little bit more about the ethical aspects. And this is one course, unfortunately in German, but maybe some of you know a little bit German, that I developed with one colleague, actually about the data, ethics of data and algorithms. Also in a language that can be easier to understand for the general public, but also learning about social implications, ethical aspects, and so on. Because actually what is behind, and this is again from the book from Kate Crawford, is all the workers that are underpaid, that help maintain and build AI, the community actually doing research, what they have behind. We don't see this in the algorithms, but we depend on them. Yeah. Also human rights, values, ethical aspects that cannot be incorporated in machines so easily. This is also aspects we need to take into account, because sometimes we have such situations. So the data, how it is processed, you better don't ask, or how ethical aspects are included in the design of such artifacts, in the implementation and so on, is sometimes nothing. Or how much AI is inside, so sometimes it's called AI, but it is no AI inside. But now AI is also software. And that's actually not a good thing. And well, when you talk about regulation, a lot of companies know regulation will break innovation and so on. And this has nothing to do with that. So we are not, or it is not the intention to regulate mathematical equations or algorithms, but for example, regulating applications that are high risk domains or that affect the lives of humans or the well-being of societies, nature, and etc. We need to pay attention to that, and maybe we don't need such applications at all. Because, for example, surveillance control power, so in the hands of not well-intended actors, we could have actually problems that not only affect particular users, but complete societies and also the whole world. So you see also in the news. So there is a lot about such guidelines, ethical guidelines for the design, for the development of such systems, for the deployment for the use of those systems. And I want you to take this also as a general thing. It involves all the different phases of the software and I wanted to say that in German, of the software development. So not only the people that use the algorithms, but from the very beginning in all the different phases of software engineering. Multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, collaboration is essential. It is not only something common or that is the role of computer scientists. So interacting with others in such multidisciplinary projects. And well, this was again from Kate Crawford, not artificial nor intelligence. It depends also on the stories, on these infrastructures, on how we define and classify, but also talk about AI. This must be also from different perspectives, from different fields. This must be done together, not only one of the fields. So the final statement, there are not truly intelligent artifacts on the horizon yet. We have very, very fast and powerful machines, algorithms for intelligence in the sense of humans. We have not them. Some people say, well, but they are intelligent in the way of machines. And I would say, well, use a different word, but not intelligent. Intelligence is something we humans are. Maybe invent a new word like tweets or Twitter. These words didn't exist before. So use maybe a different word. And the final message, so dream big, but start early, build early, involve children. We actually are the ones, and they will actually be the ones that will develop the field further in the future. And not me anymore, but my students and the children of my children and so on. So we actually are we humans are the intelligent ones and still not machine yet. Yeah. So thank you very much. I think I am some minutes over the time. I don't have any clock here, but I hope it is not too bad. So thank you very much for listening to the talk, and yeah, have a nice day. Questions, if there is any, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Professor Dagmar. It was very, very good. I took notes of pretty much a lot of things. So it's the first point that I would like to make here is that many of the books that you mentioned here, we discussed it in the lab, and I recommended them to read. Some of the authors came to talk to us as you are here today, so this is pretty good. I would like, as we have time for 2 or 3 questions, I would like to have a provocation for you. I agree with what you mentioned here. And the first thing is the definition of intelligence. Is it very hard? Or it's because we are very intelligent and we think differently about what's intelligence?
Yeah, that's a great question, because this was also part of the comments we have in the survey. So this was also some of the comments were not about the definitions, but were about, does it make sense to define? Aren't we trying to define something we still cannot define well? Not only we don't agree with that, but aren't we? Don't we want something in machines that we are and nobody else, also no artifacts can be? So this is everything open question. So there is no answer, no single answer. It's the idea. So there is no single answer. What I think it is important that we talk about that, because this would allow understanding each other. Yeah, the different perspectives and different views about why does it make sense to define intelligence in the first place, or to having them similar to us humans when we are actually different. Why should we have, for example, that in machines? We have birds, we have airplanes, and they have no similarities. For example, in this case. Now, so what I think is it is important to communicate, to understand each other, and this could allow then not only understanding, but also reaching a common language we maybe could be agreed upon. So I think that would be actually what I would suggest. So I would say, yeah.
Based on this, what do you think is missing for artificial intelligence? Based on the example that you gave of the birds, perhaps we are in the wrong way, at least some of the researchers that are seeking to develop intelligence, artificial intelligence, based on the human intelligence, but it does not need necessarily to be that way. Perhaps we should take an engineering definition of artificial intelligence and solve niche problems or specific problems that will make the world better, to help fighting climate change and things like that. So what do you think is wrong with some of this research in AI, and what's missing?
I think it is missing a lot from the point of view of knowing what intelligence is. So we still don't know what are the capabilities that contribute to intelligence, let's see, more than others. And this is a huge area also in neurosciences, in psychology. So there is no definitive definition of what intelligence is, because one of the reasons is we don't know exactly how our brains work. And sometimes people think there is only intellectual capabilities, the ones that contribute to intelligence, but we have also other capabilities that may contribute to intelligence too. So the main thing that is lacking is, of course, knowledge about a lot of things we still don't know or have the answers to. This is why I would suggest, and as you say, we maybe don't need a definition of intelligence. I think this has been the focus for so long, which is not necessary. Of course, we try to imitate, we try to understand how we are, how we think, how we behave. And we think that also having one definition or pool of definitions would help in this direction. But I don't think this is contributing to research, because anytime we try to emulate something, then we are deviating from other things that are also important. So I would be from the team, like you say, what about developing the product, maybe software engineering definition? Do we need definitions? This was one of the things I found in one research paper. So definitions allow to at least to to explain each other what we mean by something, and then it eases understanding. This is actually one of the roles of a definition, yeah, to at least to agree on talking about the same thing, you and me, but not as a paradigm, as a thing that should be reached by a program in order to behave this or that. So I think it is more for understanding each other, but not as something to be reached out or to be implemented in machines. That's what I would say.
Very good. One last one, another provocation. Are you afraid of the singularity? And if not, why?
Well, I would mention the title of one of the chapters from the book of Michael Wooldridge, which is the following: the singularity is bullshit.
That's good.
and it is a very, very interesting chapter. He gives the reasons why this is actually something to get attention in the media and so on. Singularity, so having machines that are much better than humans and that will then maybe exterminate humanity. Well, I think we are far away from that. It doesn't mean that we need to prepare and we need to analyze the risks of some technologies, that we have to think about the implications, and that we have to be aware of what we are developing that could have, of course, very negative implications for humans, for society, for the planet, and so on. It doesn't mean that. But I will stay with the definition, with the title of the chapter of Michael Wooldridge, and I
completely agree.
Yep.
Completely agree with you. And I would like to finish thanking you again for your nice and very good talk. Looking forward to meet you in Berlin next year. And if you need anything, just let me know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anderson, and thank you to the students. And if you have any questions, you can write me by email, and I would be happy to give infos, other articles, research, and so on. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye.